Greetings and welcome to the Bowling Green First United Methodist Church. We hope that you enjoy what you're about to see, and you can find us on the corner of Broadway and Church Streets at 11 o'clock on Sunday mornings. Or you can find us at bgmethodist.org and on Facebook at Bowling Green First United Methodist Church. So when I started this series, I had kind of in the back of my mind that I was looking at the hymn, Lord of the Dance, and it tells a story, there's a musical background, if this were on TV, this would be when a musical would break out all of a sudden, because that's just kind of what happens. So, but that's what's kind of what's going in the back of my head, is you could put people, you could put dancers, you could add stuff to it, and you could tell a musical, you could tell a story through all of this, but I was thinking of that, I was like, well, you've got your performance when you do that, and that takes some work to get there. That takes some work. It takes a lot of rehearsals to get from the point where you're beginning the rehearsals till the time you come and you start actually performing the musical. But the other part of that is it doesn't start, though, with the rehearsals, though. It starts a long time before that. No one just all of a sudden picks up a guitar, strums it a couple of times and goes, all right, I'm ready to start rehearsals so I can do something now. It takes a little bit of work. When I was in college, and I don't know why, but recently I've been telling more stories from when I've been in college, but I would tell, we had to take what were called methods classes. If you were a music major, that meant you had to take woodwinds and strings and percussion and brass, except I stayed away from that one. Sorry, Jeffrey. I stayed away from brass because I was a woodwind player. Brass just would not have been good for me. And we all have our problems. But you could hear, percussion wasn't too bad. You might just have a little bit of pounding in your head when you left. That was okay. It was those beginning strings classes. You take that violin, you put it up the first time, you take your bow, and you just start drawing that across there. Kids today don't know that sound of fingernails on a chalkboard. That's kind of what it's. A dry erase board just does not have the same sound as fingernails on a chalkboard. And it would just kind of grate audio. And then you go into woodwinds classes and you lift that clarinet or that saxophone up, you put it to your mouth and you blow on it the first time, and parts of your head were vibrating that were never ever supposed to vibrate before. It just was not a comfortable thing. But you would get there eventually. And I remember district contests would always be up at Truman. And as music people, we were supposed to help out with that. And so we would be room monitors, which meant we sat outside the rooms, we made sure everybody was coming and going and doing all the things they were supposed to. And we'd be sitting out there when those freshmen would go in and they would start performing their piece in front of the judges. And you'd sit there and you'd be a few cringes as things didn't go quite right. And you'd hear something, you were that close to getting the right note. Just a little bit farther and you would have made it the rest of the way. But then you would hear the seniors begin to perform. And the world of difference there was between the freshmen and the seniors, it was amazing. You could literally hear the extra years of practice and rehearsals and everything else that was taking shape in their sound and in their performance. And so it's a reminder that we're on a journey. And it doesn't start just with the rehearsals for performance, but there is more to it than even that. In fact, that becomes even clearer. Just here recently, we had another big experience, because this is not something that's limited to just music either. I find its way in so many other places. And just recently, we had the Olympics, right? And the first part of that is always kind of that big first statement as everyone is coming together, the opening ceremonies.
Bells ring all the way around Korea, ringing for peace and connecting everyone to begin the festival.
much of that little writing that you could see on there as it was going across. But and this sort of Olympic Games are something like 92 countries, 3,000 some odd athletes who were participating. If you saw the American contingent, we had the largest contingent with about 241 athletes that were there participating. This was the culmination of all of that work that these folks had been putting in for such a very long time. All of that work and preparation and beginning, all of the practices, all of the competitions, getting them to that point. This was kind of where it was all coming together. The best athletes from their countries gathered in one place to compete. And there is something, though, that is special, though, about the opening ceremonies. Where they're coming, some of these folks, they come to compete, and they know they probably aren't going to medal, they probably aren't going to do well, but they made it that far. They could walk in the opening ceremonies and be recognized for their hard work and their accomplishment and all of the things that they had done. And there was something special about that. Even a Jamaican bobsled team, which always just kind of boggled my mind, in some place that never sees snow, is competing in the Winter Games, but they were there. And the same thing is true when we look at musical performances. You know, there may be 6, 7, 8, 20, a huge number of performances that go along with that, but nothing is quite as special as opening night. Because that opening night, those opening ceremonies, they set the stage and the tone for everything that is going to come after that. Because it is big, it is special, it's important. And Palm Sunday finds itself in that exact same place. No one at this point should be surprised by what Jesus is doing. He's been preparing for this for a long time. Remember, if you can, it seems like a long time ago now, back to Advent, when we were, just starting out in December, and we were talking about the preparations that were taking place, with the announcements that were coming, with the prophecies from the Old Testament that were announcing the coming of the Messiah. With the announcement that went out to Zechariah and Elizabeth saying, you're going to have a son, and he's going to be the one who's going to make the announcement of the Messiah's ministry and say, it's begun. The announcements that went out to Mary and to Joseph, to wise men, to angels, to shepherds, to other folks around saying, the Messiah is coming. Preparations had been made and were still being made for what was still to come. There weren't any surprises, but there was a whole lot of preparation. As we look at the words for our next verse this morning of Lord of the Dance, Jesus was prepared for things that were still coming. Now, there were some folks who were going to look at things and say, well, we were surprised by that. We're always going to be surprised by things. Jesus wasn't surprised. He was preparing all through this. As we look at these verses, as we look at this story, as we look at this verse that we're going to sing today, ask yourself, what is Jesus preparing for? And who is he preparing in the midst of this? So as we see these words and look at them there for a second, I invite you to join with me in singing this next verse of our Lord of the Dance. And as we look at the story of Jesus coming in and starting something very new and very different, will you join in singing with me? It comes down to the preparation. Jesus was ready and he was prepared. He had been preparing all throughout the story. When we read the Gospels, Jesus is preparing for this week, for what it is that is coming. Palm Sunday is opening night for the climax of this story that is being told. Every time he preached a sermon and taught a crowd of people, or even sometimes just his own disciples. Every time he cured someone who was sick or healed a leper. Every time he multiplied a piece of bread or a fish or changed a drop of water into wine. All of it was in preparation for what is coming. And no one else realizes it at this point of the story, but Jesus has a home field advantage coming into this. The religious leaders were trying. They were trying to stop this story. They had this thought. They had this thought that they were in the fourth quarter, and they were going to be able to finally stop him, and everything was going to be good, and they were going to win this game. They didn't know that they had already lost. They should have. It should have been clear because they hadn't won anything else up to this point. But now they thought they finally had him stuck in one place, and they were going to get Jesus. They don't realize that they aren't going to catch up ever. They're thinking they're in the fourth quarter, but what they don't know is that the game has just barely started. That they haven't even gotten onto the field yet. They're going to try and catch Jesus, but he's already got them, but they don't know it. Some of them even, as the story was told, as Jesus was coming into Jerusalem, trying to tell Jesus they said to him, "Teacher, scold your disciples, tell them to stop." He answered, "I tell you, if they were silent, the stones would shout." You've probably heard the saying in music and in sports and other places that, it's what gets said when something bad happens, someone gets sick, someone gets injured, getting ready to go out on stage, and all of a sudden one of the leads gets laryngitis, and you scramble around for a while, but the mantra that goes on is, the show must go on, right? The show must go on. And so you find your backup quarterback or your backup receiver, you pull out the understudy and say, "All right, it's time to go on. And we know you didn't practice much the last couple of weeks, but you're on now. Here we go." Our response to that is, well, we're kind of prepared, but we don't know really what's going to happen until it does. And so then we react and we pull in the backup so we can go out and we can do it. The difference in what Jesus is doing here is Jesus is not reacting. Jesus isn't reacting in this moment. It's almost like he is giving the Pharisees a warning, telling them, "I'm ready for this. You all don't really know what you're getting into. I am ready for this. And if you stop my folks, even the stones themselves will shout out." Now we're prepared for this. You try and stop us in one place, a new voice will rise and will come out and will speak to this. That promise will still hold. It can't be held back. The show will go on. If one stop, others will rise up. Because Jesus isn't reacting. He is ready and prepared for what is coming. And this is his story and his message. He doesn't stop or get stopped. But when one piece seems to end, another one is already ready to step up and to go forward and take that message on. And we've seen this happen over and over and over again throughout our Christian history. I mean, we look at Jesus' own story, and it starts all of this off where the religious leaders thought that they had stopped it on that Friday when Jesus was crucified. But then Easter morning comes. The disciples who are basking in the knowledge of Jesus' resurrection and excited that he has done that, by the time we get a few weeks down the road, are still uncertain about what they do next. But Jesus told them already, said, "I will send my Spirit to be with you." And then the day of Pentecost comes. The next big controversy that rocks the church is that you've got the folks, the Jewish leaders that are sitting back in Jerusalem, and they're telling all these new Gentile converts, saying, "Well, if you're going to believe in Jesus, you've got to be Jewish first." And they're like, "What?" And there's some discussion about how that's supposed to work. And in a somewhat more dramatic fashion, the city of Jerusalem is destroyed, and who are left but the Gentile converts to take up leadership and to take that story and spread it out to the rest of the world. Fast forward now about another 1,500 years when there were leaders inside of the Catholic Church that had lost their way, and in steps Martin Luther, and the Reformation begins. Go forward a little bit farther into our own Methodist history when many folks in England, in the Anglican Church, had kind of left some folks behind that were left out of that story. And John Wesley, begins to reach out to them, preaching in fields and outside of bars and on street corners and sometimes even inside of churches until they kicked him out. He was kind of proud, I think, at times of the number of churches that he had been kicked out of for the message that he was preaching. And we see that he is reaching these folks that had never been reached before. It changed England, but changed us even more, because then that message made its way across the ocean into the colonies, and then spreading westward as we went westward across what became known as the United States. We've seen this story happen over and over and over again. When one piece stops, Jesus is already at work with the next piece for it to step up and take lead. This is our hope. That we can, this is the hope that we can have, that Jesus does not stop. He is already at work to keep that story going. But it's also our warning, too. Jesus never leaves anyone behind anywhere along the way, but directions change, leaders change. Things that were unthinkable a generation before, like having non-Jewish followers of Jesus, now are the ones who are leading and telling the story to the next generation. There are still Jewish people. There are still Jewish followers of Jesus. The Catholic Church is still leading people to Christ. The Anglican Church is still leading people to Christ. Jesus doesn't leave us behind, but every time the direction changes, the story grows a little bit bigger, and a new generation of leaders rise up to take that story out to a new place, into a new group of people, all because Jesus is already at work. Where are we in the story? Are we trying to do the stopping, or are we ready to take that story forward? What Jesus is doing today is not at all what we thought he might be doing yesterday, and that's okay. He won't leave us behind, and instead, he opens up new places for us. We go forward, and my challenge to us is that we go forward with him. We may not know what is coming next, but to know that Jesus is already prepared. He's already set the way in front of us, and this is his story. And he is saying to all of us, come and join me in the dance. This is opening night, and the show will go on. We've got all sorts of things that are going on this week as we are building up to next Sunday. And so let us go with Jesus and celebrate this day and all the days to come, and celebrate that hope and that joy that he brings. And let us take that message and not have it stop, but be the ones to take that message forward to a new group of people. And let us do all of this in Jesus' name. Amen.